She is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, Chartered Institute of Taxation and Compliance Institute of Nigeria, a first-class graduate of the University of Lagos. She also went to Imperial College, London, and Harvard Kennedy School, Cambridge. She is the co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of Compliance Professionals Plc, Nigeria. She currently serves as Chairman and Independent Director of Afia Care, a private health investment firm. She's also on 3 public boards, including MTN Nigeria. She's non-executive director of MTN Nigeria. If you've been having problems with your MTN network, don't let her leave this place. She's also non-executive director of Nigerian Bureaus PLC. She is independent director of PZ Cousins. She's also the chairman of Restra Limited, a firm of management consultants, which she founded in 1996. She is executive director of Dagomo Foundation Nigeria, Limited by Guarantee. Dagomo is a family social enterprise. She is the current president of Queen's College Old Girls Association. That is why we are of like mind. She went to Unity School. I also went to Unity School. That's why she's particularly my mentor. Ifueko is a recipient of several awards for distinguished service to her country. She is a member of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in national honor. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, men and women, can you join me to welcome this original Benin babe to the stage as she takes us on this keynote address? Can you stand please and give her a rousing welcome? Welcome, ma'am.
First of all, good morning, and thank you for this great welcome. In a way, it's good that there's a small crowd here, so I can make this actually as participative as possible. I know this is a keynote address, but I usually come to these events also to learn. So I've asked that the microphone be available so that if I ask any questions, I'd like to hear your viewpoints. That is also why I don't have a ready presentation. I do have a presentation, but it's not complete. It's not complete until I hear from my audience, and I haven't had the opportunity to even interact with the audience before now. So permit me to circulate my presentation afterwards, but I do have slides that I'm going to go through, and then we'll go through the presentation as we move. So once again, thank you for this opportunity. Now, together with me are 2 of my colleagues, and I'd like to just publicly acknowledge them because they are really here also to support this process, and I'm also very thankful for them to working with me to support this address. So first would be Temitayo Oguyemi, is she here? And Indideka Opigo. Thank you. I'm sorry it's not a diverse group. Next time we'll add a few men. All right. First of all, let me, what is my address about? While we wait for the slide to be projected, it's leadership in a technology-driven environment. Expectations of the supervised, supervisors, government, and the tech community. Now, I must admit that this title was crafted by me working with Sylvester. And this was really trying to understand what he wanted me to talk about. And he wanted me to talk about, leadership, what I did, in FRS. And that was a long time ago, even though the principles are still very much the same. But I felt relative to the topic on hand and the theme of this conference, which is digital innovation and the future of work, implications for community, industry, and governance, that it should also be linked to what we're doing here. I will try to talk about FRS one way or the other, and if I don't, please feel free to ask questions in that regard. And so we agreed on this topic, and let me tell you why I like this topic. First of all, it's about the technology-driven environment we are in. Second, it's about leadership, which is what I was called in to discuss. But third is that one thing I've realized over time is that one of the key roles of leadership, which we don't really realize, is the management of expectations. Is the management of expectations. And therefore, it's very important that we understand the expectations, that I even understand your expectations, and that together on a day-to-day basis, we continuously learn to learn to understand the expectations, but also manage the expectations, on an ongoing basis. So, I believe I have 1 hour. Okay. I don't have my phone here, so be the timekeeper. So if it's 30 minutes, 20:10, please let me know. Now, I had never heard of ISACA. I don't know whether that's how you pronounce it. ISACA, right? And I went to your website. And even on the website, I didn't see the meaning of ISACA. So I now went and Googled. So I must have missed it, but I didn't see it. And I believe it's the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. But I did know it was about information security. And I was very, very grateful that I'm talking to you on an issue that is so very fundamental to our today's world. And you all must be very proud to be part of this association. So give yourselves a round of applause. Because yesterday's skills are not the same as today's skills. You build on it, but it's a constantly moving boat. So, again, well done. The vision of the Abuja chapter is to be a leading organization which drives the IT industry in Nigeria. And the mission is to promote the education of individuals for the improvement and development of their capabilities and competencies. I hope one of the things you get out of what I'm going to discuss today is that as you look at your vision and as you look at your mission, you try and think about it in a wider sense. Because the way it is right now, it's really focused on just yourselves. But honestly, and I hope that's what I'm going to end up discussing today, it can't be only about yourselves. Because you see, the more you educate yourself, the more you widen the gap between yourself and every other person. And if the other persons that you're working with don't know what you're doing, you can't do your job. Do you understand what I mean? So, to help you, you need to also help all of us. Know what you do what you want us to do, building the controls you are skilled to do. Otherwise, you will not be recognized, you won't be rewarded, you won't get the satisfaction and the self-actualization of your profession. And at the end of the day, yes, you come to the association, you get those skills, but are you able to make the impact on the world that I believe you want to make? I believe that you do a lot more if you widen the way you look at yourselves. So the first slide I'd like to just talk through is, what is leadership? Again, a lot of the charts here, apart from one, we got online. The specific sources we've not been able to pinpoint, but just to know that this is not a slide coming from me, but it's a very interesting slide. And it's a slide that I think encapsulates a lot of what I like to talk about. So leadership has different meanings. Some will say that the ability to move everybody in the direction you want them to move without them even knowing about it. They just move. But there's somebody moving them. And they do it willingly, happily. They don't feel stressed about it. The leader that is able to move his or her people in that direction is the ultimate test of a true leader. Some will also say that leaders are those who have problems to solve. People come to you to tell you their problems. So if you are not able to tell your supervisor or the person you work with a problem, or if the person that you are supervising is not able to tell you a problem, then you have to question your capacity as a leader. And embedded in that is the reality that leadership is at different levels. And this is again quoting the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, which looks at leadership from a dimensional perspective. So there's personal leadership, which is ourselves, interpersonal leadership, how we relate with each other, managerial leadership, how you manage the people that you have, organizational leadership, which is at the peak of whatever organization you believe in, your ability to lead your industry, your society, your community, regardless of the kind of organization you are. Even as a family, that's an organizational unit. So organizational leadership is meeting your vision, your mission. So ISACA, organizational leadership, the president and the team to move the organization where it should be. Let me also talk about country leadership. Nigeria, for example, where we are, our home, how can we be leaders as a country in the global world, in our regional continent, in Africa, what world? And then there's global leadership. Global leadership where you want to sit, moving and being counted as those top countries that are driving the way things are going worldwide. So let's look at the Russia-Ukraine war. Until the war, we didn't quite realize that in that belt, there were global leaders in grains. We didn't know that. But when the war started and we're all deprived of it, then we realized that, wait a minute, but did we know that it was coming from Ukraine? No. So if you go back to my original thing, leaders are those that you don't even know they are moving in a particular direction. You are busy buying grain, happy with the bread you were eating, the wheat, baking cake, but you had no clue that you were not even producing the wheat. Did you feel it? No. Was it stress-free? Yes. But you enjoyed it? Yes. That's global leadership for grains. And so, as we discuss leadership, we need to contextualize it also in the environment we find ourselves in, which is the technology environment, technology-driven environment. We've come a long way as a world, from the primitive environment that the basic human being was brought up in, to using our brains, to moving us through mechanized industrial revolution, the digital, revolution, and then, if some would say we're now in the one-to-one, what do you call it? There's this technology word you guys use. Sorry? 4.0. No, it's 4.0. It's more than 4.0. There's Internet of Things. Internet of Things. Internet of everything. So I need to go for those training too. I'm the right place. Okay, so things have moved. Now, so when we discuss leadership, and I'm addressing you first because, again, the other thing about leadership is an inside-out principle. So if you want to discuss leadership, the presumption is that you start with what you can influence before what you are concerned about. So I talk first to ISACA Abuja chapter because I can influence you. You are sitting in this room now. And again, using Covey, there's what he calls circle of concern and circle of influence. And we should spend less time on the circle of concern because we really can't do much about it. But let's focus on the circle of influence, our influence. What can we do? And then as we do those things, we can reduce that circle of concern. So I'm going to talk a lot about you as about Abuja chapter, hoping that you will influence the larger world. So we're in a technology-driven environment. And so you have the power. You have the power to influence because you have the first skills. And those of us who don't, to get us to know how to operate in this technology-driven world. And so you are leaders. You are not just ISACA Abuja chapter leaders. You should see yourself as community leaders. You should see yourself as organizational leaders. You should see yourselves as country leaders. And because you belong to a global organization, guess what? You should also see yourselves as global leaders of change in moving us in a direction that is good for all of us without us knowing, but knowing we're doing the right things. And in that concept of leadership, 4 things that you need to do, that we need to be very mindful of. One is you need to inspire. Inspire people. And by inspiration, you're taking them such that they do it willingly. They really love what you do. So how can you do your work that even as a chapter you inspire people? People want to listen, they want to come. Even as the skills you are developing, you inspire people. People want to learn, even if they are not in your profession. They want to know more. You need to think about that. You need to share your vision, and I really love that you have your website because that's the beginning of sharing information, but it goes beyond the website. It's really about sharing. The real effective communication is how you do what you do, your action. Share your vision in your family. Who knows? That 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, you begin to sow the seeds in that child of what that child could do 10, 20 years after. Share the seeds with your colleagues in your profession, not in your profession. Share the seeds with your bosses. Don't get intimidated. You need to understand where the people you work with are coming from, but share that vision. And you share it in such a way that they imbibe it. That should be your end goal. Lead change. That's so critical. Leadership. Lead. Lead change. Does Nigeria need change? Does the world need change? We all do. And in leading change, you need to understand the nuances of the change you're trying to lead. And if we look at Nigeria, there's so many things that we need to improve on. And so watch your language. Watch what you say. Be positive. Because sometimes the larger environment could make us so frustrated that we forget that any negativity affects us. It makes us be more negative. And guess who is the first victim of negativity? Who is? Who? Yourself. Yourself. You know, it's almost like, there are times when I'm seeing a child, complaining about something. So I now mimic the child and I'm squeezing my face and I'm doing this. And I say, do you know what this is doing? I know I'm even feeling it. You try it yourself. Just squeeze yourself. Squeeze it. Can you feel that it's not, you don't feel good? Okay, now smile. You don't feel free. Isn't it? So you are the first victim if you are negative. Be positive. Be positive. There is always positive in any situation. Let that be your paradigm. There's always positive in every situation.
And just to talk about my experience in FRS, I remember coming into FRS, never worked in government, ever. The closest I'd ever worked in government was to be part of a facilitation to do Vision 2010 for Nigeria. And so you're here leading the federal parastatal. I have no clue about ever worked. I've never worked in FRS before. But I had to think positive. And then you are hearing all kinds of different negative comments. And you're asking yourself, how do you stay positive? In fact, there was a time, and I honestly thanked the unions at the time for it, because there was a time I was really, really getting so frustrated with the level of corruption. And I would come and I would talk about it. And then I got a piece of paper one day, and somebody said, Madam, every time you talk about corruption, we're all not feeling bad now. All of us are not like this now. Even though you say many people are like this, but I'm sure there's one person that's not like this. So why are you, So I said, you know what, you're right. So I changed. People don't understand that feedback to a leader is important. That doesn't change the situation I was unhappy about. But being positive helped me embrace the reality that, look, and that's when I said, okay, you know what, we're drawing a line. From now on, we forget whatever anybody did going back. As we move forward, if you are caught, then you'll be punished. But the starting point is that, you know what, we're all in it together. That helped. It helped me because, you know what, with that previous attitude, I was just getting cases to do. I wasn't doing any other thing. I'd forgotten about what brought me there. So being positive is critical. And then the other thing I want to talk about is empowering people. What does empowering people mean? Have structures that encourage them to be the best. What's this word? Square pegs in square holes. One of the things that, again, is back to where we're all coming from. We sometimes carry as leaders into our positions is once we're in a particular position, this is the opportunity. All the wrongs that they've ever done to me now, I'm going to correct them. And sometimes you look at wrongs, in fact, all the time, you look at wrongs from a personal perspective. Nobody recruits people from my tribe. Nobody recruits people from my religion. All the procurements, I didn't benefit from it. I need to collect some money this time around. You start trying to you forget why you are there. You forget that you are there to lead a group of people to success for the organization. And all those personal thoughts do not help you achieve success. In fact, what you also don't realize, is that you are ultimately killing yourself. I'm doing some work right now, which I hope I'll finish soon. And one of the things coming out of that process is that because of I would say, reality, that the Nigerian environment has not been fair. It didn't start today. It has not been fair across board. Young versus old. Women, men. Major ethnic groups, minority ethnic groups. And when you say major and minor, it's all relative. Inside minority, there's major and minor. Isn't it?
Yeah, you're right, sir. You're right.
And we're not fair to each other. Systems. We talk about unity schools. We went to unity schools. You think people like it? They don't like it. Unity schools versus those who are not unity schools versus religious schools. Why? Because at that time, and even now, some schools had more funding than others. Some schools had more opportunity than others. And we're all supposed to be growing to build Nigeria in a just system, but products of a system that is not just. So how can we not be just? So we carry that baggage without realizing it. And instead of us recognizing that we're all victims, all of us, we're all victims, we start blaming this person is in power. Today is Jonathan, there's a problem. Tomorrow is Buhari, there's a problem. Then we start fighting on platforms. Ashiwaju is the savior. Peter Obi is the savior. To a point of death. Then the person comes to power. Then the next one, no, that guy did not do well. Sylvester is now the savior. We now replace systems thinking with individual thinking. It can't work. We don't demand certain things for ourselves because we think the problem is in the individual, whereas it's in the system. We don't understand that we are victims of that system, even the way we work. But a leader does not allow those things to affect them. A real leader, an inspiring leader, a leader that empowers, a leader that shares vision, because communication is so critical. I remember in FRS, I didn't understand, we were doing all this communication, tax matters and so on, just to carry everybody along, because I came from a mindset of stakeholder management. You must carry all the stakeholders together. 10 years after, I still see people in the airport. They don't even know that I left. My last year in FRS was 2012. I entered FRS 2004. Until tomorrow, somebody will recognize me that I know this face. I don't know the person. I know this face. This lady, thank you. You do get thank you. Because sometimes you're working in government, for those in government, you think it's a thankless job. You get thank you. Do your part. I left unfinished business. I didn't finish everything I needed to do. There's no doubt about that. But you know what I've also realized? People understand if you've tried your best. So just try your best. Be fair to people. Don't look at the color of people's skin. Don't look at where they come from. I remember in those days we used to argue. I would change deployment because there was this issue of juicy deployment. I said, no, there's nothing like juicy deployment. Empowering people was very central to what I was doing. The structure we're putting in place, some people said, but you're always changing the structure. When the structure was not working, I changed it. Towards, it's not really getting us what we wanted to do. And it was also having capacity building of our people at the heart of it. Because we couldn't be a service without giving the people the power to do so. And I remember when we were deploying, some people wanted to stay stuck in one particular position. No, madam, no. You've moved me to Gombe, or you've moved me to Lagos. The Gombe person doesn't want to go to Lagos. The Lagos person doesn't want to go to Gombe. They want to stay. I said, okay, madam, you can't learn. You will not understand what you are doing if you don't move around. When people come to me, they say, madam, please let me talk to chairman. I want to remain here. I said, you're coming to the wrong person now. Because this request you're giving me is not in your child's best interest. So as a leader, you're going to face all kinds of pressures. But it's also important that you believe in what you're doing. You need to believe in what you're doing. Nobody's giving me time out and you're just looking. I know that I've spent a lot of time already. So let's go to the next slide. Now, one of the messages I want to leave with you is that leaders must think systemically. I've started talking about the system. I was actually talking about the Nigerian system and how that Nigerian system is not working. Seriously, it's not working. But I don't want to live with it's not working. I want us to talk about how it should work. Some parts of it, so we do have a system. So at least we have a system. Now, that system needs to change. And that is why leaders must lead change. And I'm going to try and expose you to certain parts of what systemic thinking is about. Now, let me get closer to this. So you see a box of Concentric Blues. Now, that first blue is a way of depicting the topic of today. What are the expectations for the supervisor, the supervised, government, and the technology community? I could choose to just talk about them individually, but we'll lose something. We'll lose something that they're all connected. And we can build this system in so many different ways. But this is one way I've chosen to just visually depict why it's a system. So when I say system thinking, always realize that if you do A here, it's going to affect B here. I hope you get. And that is why if you choose to employ only people from your ethnic group, it has consequences. So don't be surprised that you lose respect, that you lose credibility, and you don't even have the kind of skills you need. And therefore, you don't achieve the results. Even if the first intent you had was, I want to satisfy my community. But your community is not why you are here. And even in satisfying your community, sometimes people don't realize that the best people to satisfy your community are not necessarily your community people. They're the people who have the interest of your community at heart, which is fine. But does it have to be the people from your community? No. If you want to create jobs, do you create jobs by staffing an organization with people you don't need? You know what you've done? You've disempowered people. Because they will have no skills. They will come to work. They collect salary. We're in our minds replacing collecting salary with empowerment. Big mistake. The best way you can empower your child, and always think about it, is to give your child education. If all you do is give your own child, that I think is the closest, your child or your ward, if you don't have a child, that person you care for, and you just keep giving money. Giving money. You think that's empowering the child? No, what you're doing, you're making that child dependent on you, and it never ends. That is why some children, when they are 6, they start fighting their parents. They start going into blows. They start stealing. Why? Because that's what they've been taught. Empowerment is not cash. Empowerment is skills development. And that is one language you should eliminate from our vocabulary. Because the slang, come and empower me now, is cash. Isn't it? Come and empower me now. It's not empowerment. Just say, come and slave me now. That's what you mean. You are making the person a slave. Let's begin to put truth to what we are doing. We are making the person dependent, not interdependent. And before you become interdependent, you must be independent. That is why in books about parenting, they tell you, build your child. Don't, even if you can afford to do certain things, let your child do certain things. Let your child start working for you. Let your child start, I'm not discussing child abuse, no. Cleaning his room or her room. Even if you can afford somebody to clean the room, that's how you will start empowering the child. It's the same thing in the workplace. It's the same thing at a country level. We're making this mistake. And that's why I just accept this invitation. So just keep talking. We keep on making these mistakes. We think our problem is the neighbor. No, our problem is ourselves. It's ourselves. So back to this. Everybody affects everybody. What you do in government affects the organizations. As an organization, you don't know that your priority is your people. If you're a service organization and skill building, if you don't start setting that as an organizational target, you may have supervisors that really don't care. And how the supervisors treat the supervised also affects the supervised. But what the supervisors also don't know, because I wish I could have multiple how the supervisors themselves also treat the supervisors affects them. Do you get what I'm trying to say? We're all linked. And you as a tech community, how you affect, how you educate everybody, how you raise advocacy, how you work with each other, showing yourselves as an example to others. There are associations that are fighting over who should be president. The same organization are talking about the Nigerian electoral system when they themselves cannot get their own electoral system right. You should ask yourself, wait a minute, before I start addressing my concern, let me be an example. That's leadership. That's leadership. And that is why I added this red box inside. That how government also, it's not as simple as just a union level, no. They are all, I could add others, concentric circles, all affect each other. You know, and the best example of a system is the human body. This is a system. We take it for granted, but it's a working system. If you cut a nose, it changes the way your face looks. It even changes your balance. If you cut your ear, sometimes you correct, you compensate, but then you have to get something else to correct it. You do one thing there, it affects one thing there. And it gets even more, you get to understand it even more as you get older. Because as we walk, as we eat, we take the fact that we've built high levels of immunity. I have a 90-year-old father right now in a hospital. And one of the things about aging is that you go into the hospital with one thing. Because your immune system is not as strong as when you were younger. As you enter the hospital, you are just praying. Because as you solve one, another thing comes up. You solve another one, another thing comes up. And you just pray that all those things that are solved will one day stop. That is life. That is life. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about the people we lead. And I think in this to try and underscore the fact that leadership is not easy. It's not easy. No matter what I say here, it's one of the most difficult things to do. And that's why it helps to back leadership up with systems. You're all system auditors. Processes, policies, because that helps put the leader, it helps protect the leader, it helps guide, it helps give a compass. And that's why some will say that to achieve performance, and I think there was one of the professors I was listening to recently, he says it's 20% people, but it's 80% the system. Because you know, as people, we change, don't we? How we were thinking yesterday may differ from today. So if I'm following you today, and I keep following you, I might end up in
I don't know where, Okitokupa somewhere. You know? Because, and it's not as if you're deliberately moving me in that direction. Your experiences, your knowledge, your exposure, and you may be completely unmindful that I'm following you. So a system and a leader being principle-centered helps. Because that in itself is a system. You don't leave it to your own personal choices. You are driven by what God gave us, or what the world gave that we see all around us. And what are those principles like? We all have trees, don't we? There's a principle that says you reap what? What you sow. It's deep. And what you reap is in so many different colors, varieties, lengths, textures. And so it means emphasize the sowing. Another thing about nature that nature has taught us is nurturing matters. You nurture to achieve the growth you want. You can't just dump water on a plant and it just grow. No, sometimes you go there, you tender, you remove the weeds, you nurture. And you learn. We learn from nature. We learn from the changes. So let me just talk about the people we are leading. And to help bring to bear the complexity of the environment we are in. Now this is a chart, and there are so many of these charts. You hear all this Gen Z, Gen X, isn't it? What gen are you? You don't know? It's Gen X. Okay, so this graph talks about different gens. Silent generation, 1928 to 1945. My father is in that generation. Baby boomers, 1946 to 64. I'm in that generation. Generation X, 65 to 80. Some of you here will be in that generation. Millennials, Zoomers, generation. And you can get more about this online. But this is the US chart, by the way. And there are variants of this in the European system, Asian system. But I tend to see some kind of direction. And then we'll go and be reading about how do you manage millennials? How do you manage Generation Z? How do you manage this? Good. And each of these generations are different, and how you manage them different. But let's go to Nigeria. We are this plus. Next slide. Have you heard about the Indomie Generation? Have you heard about them?
Yes.
Who are the Indomie Generation? They are here. Why do you call them Indomie Generation? Sorry? Food. Quick. But you know that there are implications for managing quick generation.
Yeah.
Have we learned how to do that? Does it fall in the bucket of Generation Z, X? No. It's unique to us. But let me also say something that is unique to us. Even though we are calling this younger group Indomie, there are some older people that are Indomie. No, seriously. It's not age-driven. Unlike the Generation X is age. In our case, it's not age. I've just seen some 50-year-olds that are Indomie. Quick. Maybe the percentage will be less. And then for the younger, the percentage will be more. We need to start understanding the patterns of the people we manage. There's another name of generation that we know, we say, but we don't realize that we need to manage them too. What do you call that generation? Japa generation. Isn't it? That cuts across ages too. The massive flux of talents moving to different countries, not just in Nigeria, by the way. And then we can describe different generations as patient generation and those that are not patient.
We usually think about it when we're looking at marriage. We say, in those days, my mother tolerated all kinds of things now. Isn't it? Yes. But now, if you don't do this to me, I'm gone. So there's the impatient generation of the old. But would you say they are impatient or maybe more courageous? Do you get? There's a more courageous generation. It's all relative. And it depends who is talking. Maybe a woman will say courageous, maybe a man will say, they are impatient. Do you get? But what am I trying to say? The people we manage have different characteristics. If you don't understand them, you can't lead them. So I've talked about the systems, but I also want to talk about understanding the people you lead. And to understand is hard. Because they'll be looking at you. Because again, we're in the African culture, isn't it? What the boss says, but you know it's not correct. And then you keep quiet, yes sir, yes ma'am. But they will do what you want to do, but you are not going to end up with any results. We need to understand the people, and then we need to start seeking feedback. Looking at their eyes, where they are going. You need time. We are in a truly VUCA world, even from the perspective of the people we manage. VUCA meaning what? Volatile, uncertain, complex. What's the A? Sorry? Ambiguous. And there are different variants of that too. So, what's my conclusion? Back to the topic. Leadership in a technology-driven environment, expectations of the supervised, supervisors, government, and the tech community. It's a tough world. We should also not take it for granted, but it is doable. But it requires your time, it requires your investment, it requires catching up with the changes in technology. It requires also you being driven, setting high standards. A lot of the technology we find today is an outside, somebody does it out there and then we follow. What have you done yourselves? What are you doing to impact the world? What global leadership are you setting for yourselves? So I hope with this I've been able to help trigger some thinking, trigger some action, help move you in a direction to just continue on the path of making your chapter a bigger, better, impactful chapter. Help impact you, your world, help impact our country, make it better, and help impact humanity. Thank you.
My name is Ifueko Okauru. I've been invited to present at the Keynote address November 2nd at this 2022 conference of ISACA Abuja chapter. I'm so proud that quite a number of the members of ISACA Abuja chapter are actually FRS staff. And a number of them, if not all of them, came in while I was chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. It's a real proud day for me. I'm also proud to be associated with a chapter that is involved with leading in technology, leading in cybersecurity, leading in information systems audits, and leading in information technology audits, and amongst others. This is a very important job that members of the chapter do. And I would like to commend you all for the work you do, encourage you all to be global leaders for the world, but also leaders in your various countries. And in Nigeria, we need you. We need to grow the chapter in such a way that every organization has a member. And I think, like the members that the president said, aspire to be the CEO of those organizations. So that you set the tone that you can't achieve results in this environment without putting in place the right systems, the right technology controls, and ensuring the right audits that puts all our leaders in check, so that that also gives a feedback system that makes us continue to improve day after day. Congratulations on this 2022 conference, and thanks for the opportunity to be here.